Article 11 proposes to amend the zoning bylaw to allow drive-up windows for pharmacies and restaurants in office, business, industrial, and village districts, and would establish design standards for drive-up windows for banks, which are now allowed in most districts, as well as for pharmacies and restaurants. The article requires a 2/3 majority to pass, and it is recommended by the Select Board, the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, and the Economic Development Committee. The concept of allowing such drive-up windows has been brought to town meeting in the past, usually garnering a majority vote, but not the required 2/3 majority. At the request of the Select Board, the Planning Department conducted a public outreach program consisting of virtual public forums on October 15th, 2020, and on December 8th, 2020. Additional online surveys were conducted with 1,271 responses to the first survey and 704 responses to the second survey. In both surveys, between 73% and 77% of the respondents supported drive-up windows at banks, pharmacies, and restaurants in office, business, industrial, and village districts on a permanent basis. Interestingly, the demographic questions in both surveys showed that over 60% of the respondents were female, and over 60% were between the ages of 36 and 60. My speculation is that women of that age group are the ones in most families who are tasked with getting medication for sick kids or grabbing a quick meal on a busy school night. During my election campaign, and in the over 2 years since, I have been approached many times by Acton residents asking why drive-up establishments are not allowed in Acton. And I've heard many accounts of Acton residents who drive to neighboring towns to use drive-up establishments, disadvantaging our merchants. During the pandemic, interest in low-contact delivery systems, such as drive-thrus, has increased, with many folks expressing a desire to pick up medication and meals in a very safe and distanced fashion. Admittedly, the pandemic seems to be waning, but there are many changes in our lifestyle that will probably become permanent, and there is always a possible next time. I have never been approached by any corporate entities lobbying for drive-through establishments, and I have no personal knowledge that any particular entity would avail themselves of the opportunity to establish a drive-up presence. But my feeling is that this measure is business-friendly, and over time some drive-through uses would be created and as new buildings are created or existing ones modified. The Planning Board and the Select Board recognize that establishing a drive-through presence is very site-specific. Issues of traffic, topography, aesthetics, noise, and impacts on neighboring businesses all need to be taken under consideration. For that reason, the proposal would provide that drive-through establishments must go through a full special permit process through the Select Board. During that process, the Select Board will take into consideration the viewpoints of neighbors, town departments, and town boards, such as the Design Review Board and the Historic District Commission. The Design Review Board has provided excellent feedback regarding what site-specific design issues should be looked at if this zoning bylaw amendment passes. To reiterate, Article 11 proposes to amend the zoning bylaw to allow drive-up windows for pharmacies and restaurants in office, business, industrial, and village districts, and would establish design standards of drive-up windows in banks, which are now allowed in most districts, as well as for pharmacies and restaurants. It is a declared goal for Acton to be a pedestrian-friendly and village-centered community. But achieving those goals do not conflict with, nor do they trump all other needs of our residents. There is an excellent pharmacy in West Acton, and due to the physical constraints of the site, installing a drive-up window would be very difficult. My feeling is that due to this pharmacy's excellent reputation and loyal customer base, they would not be impacted by another pharmacy on the other side of town having a drive-through window. Critics have said that we should encourage people to walk to locations to conduct their business, and I agree. However, there are only 3 pharmacies in Acton, which has an area of 20 square miles. So the number of people who will practically walk to a pharmacy is rather a small portion of our population. Critics have also stated that you should have a face-to-face encounter with your pharmacist. And again, I agree when that is necessary. And nothing in this proposal would prohibit such an interaction. This proposal would provide some good choices for our almost 22,000 residents. They would get to choose where to conduct their business, either in person or in a drive-through situation. But if you have a mobility issue, or are immune compromised, or you have a sick kid in the car, or you just want to pick up a cup of coffee on the way to work, you would now have the option to receive services in a safe and well-regulated fashion right here in Acton.